That is a really good thing. That maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll put that on my mirror at my bathroom. Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. That passage certainly reminds us about how much God loves us. And every day when I get up and I look into the mirror, and there's less hair and more wrinkles and more things to remember that I messed up on yesterday and I'm looking into the new day, I need to be reminded of that, and we all do. Jesus invites us all. No matter who we are, no matter what we've done, no matter how far we've strayed or fallen or whatever, he raises us up to a new day to remind us, I love you. I love you, and I want you. I want you to come to me so that I can give you hope and comfort and rest and help. And I want to give you this new day. I love you, God says. And I don't think there's anything more important for us to be reminded of each and every day when we look into the mirror than that God loves us. Our readings and our songs today have been filled with love. That last song that we sang, it was about love. The reading, the gospel from Matthew reminds us of God's love. St. Paul, in the writing, the letter that he sends to the Romans, he wants to remind us about love. This whole day, this whole service, this whole church is really all about love. Love, 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 love. Some people are always talking about love. Do you know people like that? They're always talking about love. I love you, they say. Has your spouse said that to you yet today? Has your kids said that to you today? Have you said that to one another today? It's really sad. I mean, it's a hard thing when people don't have somebody in their life to say that I love you. Sometimes we might get sick of hearing it. I know some people who are always saying I love you, and I've heard some spouses say, well, that really 14 times at breakfast is that's enough. But I love you. I love you. Every time, maybe you know people like this, every time they get off you're winding up a telephone conversation with you, they say, I love you. I talked to my mom 2 days ago. She said, I love you. And I told her I love you, and I hope you're saying that to each other and the people in your lives as well. At the end of their texts, people will oftentimes say, love you. And then there are those people, special people in your lives, like when I was in 5th grade, I used to get notes from a girl in 5th grade, and she would sign it, love. Oh, really? No, really? All this talk about love. We talk about it all the time. We talk about it in church. St. Paul talks about it in his writings to the churches. God talks about it over and over and over again. Does it ever make you wonder, though? All this talk about love. Does your spouse really mean it? Do your kids really mean it? Does your Facebook friend really mean it? Does the girl in 5th grade, does she really mean it? All this talk about love. A lot of times it makes us stop to wonder whether they really do love us. And even God. The Bible is full of I love you. God is always saying it. All over the scriptures, God is saying, I love you. Pastor Steve introduced us to the letter of Paul to the Romans last week, and he reminded us that in his letter, Paul is writing to the Roman Christians about the gospel, which means the good news, and he said the good news is all about love. God loves us all, no matter whether we are Jews or Gentiles. God loves us all, no matter whether we are followers of the law or not followers of the law. God loves us all, no matter who we are or what we've done. Now, that seems really hard to believe sometimes, especially given what I know about myself, about what I've done in my life. I wonder a lot about how God could really, let's be honest, God, really? You love me? I've messed up so often and in so many different ways. I'm always disappointing myself. I do things, I say things, and sometimes I'm sorry about it, but then I just go on doing them over and over and over again. And I think, man, I must really tick God off. And I do. Paul says in the first 2 chapters of his letter to the Romans that the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all of the ungodliness and wickedness of people. And then he goes on to list the things that God is upset about. And when I look at that list, my sins are in that list. How could he possibly still love me when I have made a mess out of this beautiful world that he made at the beginning, and when I have hurt so many people so bad? I used to wonder the same thing about my mother. I used to tick her off a lot too. But she was always saying, I love you, Tim. And she still does say that. But how can you really know? How can you really know when you know yourself? How can you know that God really does love you and forgive you, especially when things are going bad, maybe? When you're sick or when you're hurting? Maybe he's given up on you. Maybe God is getting even with you for what you've done. Maybe he's still angry with you and he doesn't love you anymore. And that's where today's reading to the Romans comes in. St. Paul knew that doubt would be going through our minds. It went through his mind. Does God really love me? Paul asked himself that same question. He persecuted Christians, after all, before he saw the light and started to believe in Jesus. He threw believers into jail, and he even helped kill them. How could Paul know? How can we know that all of this talk from God about loving us is really, really, really true? Paul says, God proves his love for us. God proves his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. God shows that he loves us by his actions, by what he does for us. Paul says, while we were still weak, at the same time, Christ died for the ungodly. He points out that rarely will anyone die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person someone might actually dare to die. But I've not been righteous. I might be nice, especially to people who are nice to me, but there is no way that I have been good. Not good in the really good sense. But Christ died for all of us, Paul says. No matter who we are, no matter what we've done, he died for the murderer, he died for the terrorist, he died for the liar, he died for the cheat, and he died for me. He died for the people that were beneath his cross, too. Can you imagine how that must have felt to him? All those people gathered underneath his cross, putting him to death. How could he love them? How could he say, Father, forgive them, as he died for them too? But he did. He loved all of the world gathered beneath his cross, and he proved it. He proved it by dying for them, for us. He loves me then, and he loves you too. While we were his enemies by the things we did, Paul writes, God still loved us, and he sent his Son to pay for all of that and reconciled us to himself through the death of his Son. God has proven his love to us. The war is over. We have peace with God now, as Paul starts this chapter. It's all true. He proves it by his actions, by what he does. He really does love us. Just as we are, without any other things in our lives, he loves us, and he proves it by his death. Let's sing about it this morning, just as I am, without one plea.